Join me in a word of prayer. Dear Lord, may the words in our mouths, the meditations of our hearts be in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. I have to first thank the choir because the song that they sang today is very appropriate. Reap what you sow. And the second lesson in the gospel, when Pastor Mark and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, the first thing he said was, I'm glad I'm not preaching this Sunday. It's another one of those readings that when we're done reading, sometimes it's hard to say, praise to you, O Christ, because it's sad. So, depending on which of our readings we want to focus on today, I believe we will get to the same conclusion. Let's look at Paul's letter to the Thessalonians first. Paul tells us to stay away from those who are living in idleness and not according to the traditions that they received from us. Now, the background of this letter is Paul is writing to encourage those who are facing persecution and to correct misunderstanding about the timing of Christ's return. The teaching about the Lord's return prompted idleness in the young church. The imminent coming of Christ should never make us idle. We should be even more busy, living purely, using our time well, and working for His kingdom. We must work not only during easy times, but when it's convenient, but also during difficult times. Christians must patiently watch for Christ's return and work for Him while they wait. In the reading for today, Paul is telling us not to be idle, but to continue to work for what we need and not to become burdens on others. We should make the most of our talents and time, doing all we can to provide for ourselves and our dependents. There's a difference between leisure and laziness, and we need to rest when we should be resting and work when we should be working. So before I compare this to the gospel lesson, I want to share the following with you. I received this story a few years ago, and I've hung on to it because I knew that it would come in handy at some point, and today was the day. But I do have to give credit to the original author, Joshua Harris. Now, I'm not sure if the young man in the following story read his book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, and found this essay, or if through some other method, the following was written. 17-year-old Brian Moore had only a short time to write something for a class. The subject was, what was heaven like? He came home and said, I wowed him. He later told his father, it's a killer. It's the bomb. It's the best thing I ever wrote. And it was the last thing. Brian's parents had forgotten about the essay when a cousin found it while cleaning out the teenager's locker at Teary Valley High School. Brian had been dead only a few hours, but his parents desperately wanted every piece of his life near them. Notes from classmates and teachers, and his homework. Only 2 months before, he had written the essay about encountering Jesus in a file room full of cards detailing every moment of a teenager's life. But it was only after Brian's death that Beth and Bruce Moore realized that their son had described his view of heaven. It made such an impact that people want to share it, and they felt that they needed to share it with everyone. Brian Moore died May 27, 1997, the day after Memorial Day. He was driving home from a friend's house when his car went off of Bullen Pierce Road in Pickaway County and struck a utility pole. He emerged from the wreck unharmed, but stepped on a downed power line and was electrocuted. Brian's essay is titled The Room. In that place between wakefulness and dreams, I find myself in the room. There were no distinguishing features except for the one wall covered with small index card files. They were like the ones in libraries that list titles by author or subject in alphabetical order. But these files, which stretched from floor to ceiling and seemingly endless in either direction, had very different headings. As I drew near the wall of files, the first to catch my attention was one that read have liked. I opened it and began flipping through the cards. I quickly shut it, shocked to realize that I recognized the names written on each one. And then, without being told, I knew exactly where I was. The lifeless room with its small files was a crude catalog system of my life. Here were written the actions of my every moment, big and small, in a detailed memory my detailed memory could not match. A sense of wonder and curiosity, coupled with horror, stirred within me as I began randomly opening files and exploring their content. Some brought joy and sweet memories, others a sense of shame and regret so intense that I would look over my shoulder to see if anyone was watching. A file named Friends was next to one marked Friends I Have Betrayed. The titles ranged from the mundane to the outright weird. Books I have read, lies I have told, comfort I have given, jokes I've laughed at. Some were almost hilarious in their exactness. Things I yelled at my brothers. Others I couldn't laugh at. Things I have done in my anger. Things I have muttered under my breath at my parents. I never ceased to be surprised by the contents. Often there were many more cards than I expected, sometimes fewer than I hoped. I was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the life I had lived. Could it be possible that I had the time in my years to fill each of these thousands or even millions of cards? But each card confirmed this thought. Each was written in my own handwriting. Each was signed with my signature. When I pulled out the file marked TV shows I watched, I realized the files grew to contain their contents. The cards were packed tightly, and yet after 2 or 3 yards, I hadn't found the end of the file. I shut it, shamed not so much by the quality of shows, but more by the vast time I knew the files represented. When I came to a file marked Lustful Thoughts, I felt a chill run through my body. I pulled the file out only an inch, not willing to test its size, and drew out a card. I shuddered at this detailed content. I felt sick to think that such a moment had been recorded. An almost animal rage broke on me. One thought dominated my mind. No one must ever see these cards. No one must ever see this room. I have to destroy them. In an insane frenzy, I yanked the file out. Its size didn't matter now. I had to empty it and burn the cards. But as I took it at one end and began pounding it on the floor, I could not dislodge a single card. I began desperate and pulled out a card, only to find it as strong as steel when I tried to tear it. Defeated and utterly helpless, I returned the file to its slot. Leaning my forehead against the wall, I let out a long, self-pitying sigh. And then I saw it. The title bore, People I Have Shared the Gospel With. The handle was brighter than those around it, newer, almost unused. I pulled out its handle and a small box, not more than 3 inches long, fell into my hands. I could count the cards it contained on one hand. And then the tears came. I began to weep, sobs so deep that they hurt. They started in my stomach and shook through me. I fell on my knees and cried. I cried out of shame, forming the overwhelming shame of it all. The rows of files, shelves swirling in my tear-filled eyes. Not one must ever know this room. I must lock it up and hide the key. But then, as I pushed away the tears, I saw it. No, please, not him. Not here. Oh, anyone but Jesus. I watched helplessly as he began to open the files and read the cards. I couldn't bear to watch his response, and in the moments I could bring myself to look at his face, I saw sorrow